Hi everyone, welcome to the first edition of Code Remix Weekly. It's a continuation of the OpenRewrite community office hours that we've been doing in the past, but right now we've rebranded to Code Remix Weekly, and I have a T-shirt to match. So be sure to look out for Code Remix Weekly on your favorite channels if you want to see this show in the future. As always, I'm your co-host Tim Beek, and with me here is Sam Snyder.
Hello, good to see all of you again. And I'm joined by our other co-host, Nazgul, the black cat, who does not show up well on camera, but is here to support us nonetheless.
Much appreciated. And then, as always, we're going to take you through some of the things that are new this past week in OpenRewrite and Moderne. And after that, we're going to do a deeper dive with a community contributor from OpenRewrite, which is Jente, who's waiting in the back. First, let me share a window such that I can take you through the new release that we just did a couple hours ago. So if you haven't looked for the past 2-3 hours, then we were able to get all the new recipe modules out in just under 2 hours, which I think is a new record for us to get things released this quickly. Pretty pleased with the automation that we have there. And from here, you can now see that we have some 30 new recipes that you can try, which all of them have been developed over the past 2 weeks. And in large part, those have also been contributed by folks new to the project. It's been very neat to see that we've had a dozen new contributors over the past 2 weeks, contributing left and right to various modules based on their own needs, and from there, just helping everyone to now more easily migrate various use cases. I'll take you through just a couple here. So on the core OpenRewrite framework, we have some improvements here on various aspects. Some of them are on the Apache Maven handling that we have, with some intricate issues left and right. And I know, Sam, you've also spent slightly longer than you would have hoped on a very small change that has made it into this release, as have I. Of course, it's usually the very underwhelming change sets that take the longest to produce.
Yeah, I think this release has an issue that I fixed that probably in my career, one of the longest time spent debugging for the smallest possible code change in the end. It was deep in the internals of Maven dependency resolution, and usually it didn't cause incorrect results, or at least not noticeably incorrect results, but it ended up just being like changing a variable name to a literal zero. So a change of 5 characters for 2+ weeks of on and off debugging.
Yeah, it's much appreciated to get that through. And of course, the fact is now out in the open. You can use it with the latest versions of the Rewrite Maven and Gradle plugins. And if you use the Rewrite recipe bomb, then you will get all the updated modules available. Next up, we have some changes in the rewrite logging frameworks. We've probably already heard as we've been working towards better support to migrate away from Java util logging towards SLF4j. And we now have some dedicated recipes there for the parts that we hadn't covered before. In large part due to community contributors. WatchTech has been pretty active there, and just last week, Yazul also chimed in with some fixes. So pretty pleased to have those. And then on the rewrite testing frameworks, we also have some broad sweeping improvements. Where if you want to migrate away from JMockit to Mockito, then we now cover a very large part of additional statements that weren't covered before, and now are actually converted as well. So the JMockit expectations are now correctly converted. So very pleased to have that.
Yeah, thanks to Shivani for several contributions in this area.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a very long thread on our Discord channel with her, and she's been working on this off and on. And with her in Sydney, me in Europe, and Sam on the west coast of the US, I think we have been working on this pretty much around the clock to answer questions and get this through. So pretty neat. And then also there's been some very kind contributions to improve the experience when you're using JUnit together with Kotlin, such that you should also now see better results when you run the same recipes. And then on the rewrite and migrate Java, we have some more improvements where we have various new recipes to help you migrate away from older Java versions. And then all of that, of course, comes together in our rewrite recipe bomb. So have a look there if you want to see all the latest aligned versions. I'll share a link in the chat. And of course, you can also go to our docs where you can see all those links together. So have a look at that. On to other things new this week. We've had a new addition to the docs that I'm quite pleased with. I put in a request and Mike was very kind to help make it a reality. We now have a single page that gives you an overview of all the recipes that produce data tables. So if you go to docs.openrewrite.org and you go to reference recipes with data tables, you can see that there are various options here to help you analyze your code. And this, of course, works best if you use the CLI. We're able to produce these data tables across various repositories. With the Maven plugin, you can only analyze one project at a time. It will take quite a while. But with this, it's just perfect to do any type of analysis that you kind of want to do. And from there, produce any visualizations that you might need or act on the insights that you gain from running these recipes. So, for instance, the find and fix vulnerable dependencies will tell you a lot about vulnerabilities that you have in your dependencies or your transitive dependencies and tell you exactly what to do to see those fixed. So have a look at that page if you want to know all the types of analyses that you can now more easily find in a single place in our reference doc. So also new this week is that we did a new video on building a recipe with the Moderne IDE plugin. With the example being that we want to have blank lines around annotated fields, which is something that Jonathan felt so strongly about that he thought he would now finally stop fixing this by hand and write a recipe to do this automatically. And you can see in this video an annotated walkthrough of how exactly he wrote a recipe and then vetted that recipe by running it across a lot of serialized LSTs that we have for the various OpenRewrite projects, such that now finally we don't have to look at those squished together fields anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of using a recipe to automate a code standard and make everyone happier. You know, the person reviewing the code isn't annoyed to have to keep pointing out the same pet peeve in code reviews over and over. And people, you know, in code reviews are trying to get their PRs merged, like just have the code rewritten thanks to your automation, I believe, Tim, to have to have a matching code standard, and no one has to go back and forth and code review comments about it or see code that they don't like merged in, and just everyone's happier when the automation just does some of these little things for you.
Yes, absolutely. So we've ran this across all our repositories with the Moderne platform. And from then on, indeed, we are now enforcing that on every check for every pull request that comes into the platform, into the OpenRewrite collection of repositories, such that this problem just cannot make its way back into the code anymore, unless you have a colleague that pushes to master. You never know. So if you want to have your own look at developing with help of the Moderne IntelliJ plugin, then we have a form to help you out there. We just go to moderne.io/moderne IDE plugin setup, and there you can fill in this small form, and we will help you get set up in various time zones. So Sam and I have a shared calendar where we can help you out in pretty much any region that you want to get the same experience that we have when developing these recipes. And then finally, of course, a small reminder that we are going to be at UberConf in 2 weeks with well represented with Jonathan, Justine, and Olga there doing
Yeah,
4
it's
different
actually just
sessions.
figured out yesterday it's going to be me attending instead of Olga. So anyone attending UberConf who's looking forward to meet Olga, I'm sorry. I hope that I'm an adequate substitute, and I look forward to seeing you there.
All good, and enjoy. Yeah. And then myself, I won't be there. I will be in Berlin for We Are Developers World Congress, which I think if you look very closely, you have 1 hour before the price goes up. So if you want to get your tickets, then be quick. So
We understand if you stop watching us live for a minute to go get your ticket to see Tim live.
And I think I might even have some reduced price coupons, but I have to check my emails. But, so feel free to reach out, and we'll try to get you hooked up there. So that's it for everything that is new this past week. And with that, we're going to introduce our guest for tonight. And our guest is Jente Sondervorst, who we've come to know through. We first met at Spring.io last year, and we've since been working together more and more. So, without further ado, here is Jente.
Hi there.
Jente,
Hi.
nice to see you. Yeah, Jente, met Tim at Spring.io, but I first noticed Jente in our community because he'd report a bug with OpenRewrite, and I'd kind of mentally add it to my to-do list. And then a short time later, he'd come back with, "I fixed it," or like, "Here's a pull request," and I was like, "Oh, great!"
Yeah, that's
this is the ideal bug reporting experience for me as a maintainer. This is awesome. I like this guy already.
what I'm missing in GitHub itself is like a feature like I want to prepare the issue and the pull request is here. Why do I still need the issue? Sometimes I have the code ready locally, and then you have to have the administrative overhead of creating an issue first. It's
I do want to say we're not too particular. If you come in with the direct fix, then we're not going to complain that you didn't create an issue. It's much appreciated.
It's totally fine if the issue report and the pull request are the same. I have no problem with that. I'll never tell someone submitting a helpful pull request, stop doing real work, go do the overhead of opening an issue.
The less administration for all of us, the better.
Exactly. And probably a lot of people know about this, but GitHub does have, if there is already an issue open and you're doing a commit that fixes it, if there's the words, fixes or closes, and then hashtag and the issue number, once that commit is merged into main, GitHub will automatically go and close the issue that you have referenced in that way. So that kind of just a little tip for GitHub users out there that can save you a little bit of overhead.
Yeah.
And it saves me 4 months later trying to work out which was the commit that actually fixed a particular issue that is fixed by now.
Exactly.
It's like you remember the thing. I fixed it several months ago. What was the issue? You just have to find your issue back, and then you can find your code back. Sometimes it's the other way around. You start doing git blame to find the commit or the issue that you wanna that code line fixed. But I often have it the other way around, actually. Like, I know we had this issue. What was the code? So maybe we can fix it somewhere else as well.
So, Jente, I was curious because you went from using OpenRewrite to contributing fixes and patches to it pretty quickly, I think, compared to a lot of people. And Tim and I have been doing this for a long time now. It feels like a few years at least. So to some extent, we've forgotten what it's like to be new to the project, and our advice for people in our tutorials on how to like overcome that learning curve and be a seasoned user and a contributor and a recipe author. We just don't have that perspective of being the new user anymore. So as someone who has fairly recently and fairly quickly made it up that learning curve from a beginning OpenRewrite user to someone who is contributing recipes and fixing bugs in the framework, how was what was that learning curve like for you? How did you surmount that and go from unfamiliar code base to fixing problems in it so quickly?
Yeah, I think as Tim mentioned, we met first time at Spring.io in Barcelona last year, not previous edition, but last year. I did the workshop over there, and I was overblown by the demo and then struggling all the time and during the workshop, and nothing got working. And that's how
The
you
true
can trigger.
workshop experience.
That's how you can trigger me. Like, don't just give me a video of this is working. Just give me a problem. It doesn't even. Maybe it didn't ever work on Tim's PC. Who knows? Maybe he was struggling all the time, and he was finally happy that someone else fixed his issue. But
Tim, can you confirm or deny that you put on a workshop just in hopes that a workshop attendee would fix problems you had?
I do try to, when I give a workshop, the very last part of it is just a link to our good first issues. If you want to learn more about recipe development, this is the perfect place to start and learn it. Yeah.
But to me, it all started back then. So it's 2 years ago. But then I think for about a half a year, I was just doing some OpenRewrite testing, booking, piloting, shouting it within the company here, like, hey guys, you don't have to do your Spring Boot upgrade, just have it be done for you. As a central expert developer in the company, I'm more doing assistance. We don't really have a lot of applications running. We have more of the central libraries running. So doing a Spring Boot 3 upgrade over there, just using the OpenRewrite recipes. And that's how I basically gained the trust. And then, of course, you always want something more. I'm nothing else than than our end users. Then I'm also an end user in this story. So I'm also a business who always wants more, and who wants that additional feature and that additional feature on top of that. And even if that one is there, I want it again. And at a certain moment, you guys are completely booked with other features. So or any open source project, I never expect someone else to fix my requirement.
Sure.
If I have other end users in applications, I'm also the developer over there. So
Sure.
that's, I think, the mindset I took at that moment. Like, okay, I need this one. Let me just try it ourselves.
Yeah.
I know when we first got into contact again with you guys, it was you, Tim. I know we shared like a Gradle project. I created like a specific project where I've showcased all the possible ways of Gradle variable creations. It was a showcase of all the mess you might encounter throughout all the code bases. So variable definitions, variable declarations, variable through the project.x block, the x block itself, x blocks within tasks. So
yeah.
tons of
So
ways.
it's definitely important that you were a kind of a subject matter expert on the stuff you wanted the recipes to operate on. Not to, call anyone specific out, but I sometimes get bug reports about a recipe that are kind of like the recipe did the wrong thing. And I'm like, well, what's the right thing? And they're like, I don't know.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, like that's fair. It's also difficult for me to help you if you can't tell me what it should have done instead.
if it's just the code doesn't work anymore, obviously it's very hard for writing the recipe. When writing the recipe to provide a fix, that's indeed true. But so that Gradle project was actually my first recipe that I wanted to start off with, and I think I got a bit over eager to start off with with that use case. But I can say, I think Monday, so 2 days ago, we did another addition to those recipes. It's 3 recipes which basically resolve the entire recipe, the entire variables to their real value, so that in a later phase we can introduce a single way of using variables, all with a different recipe. Of course, we're not going to do it manually out of the blue then.
Yeah. So when getting to the point of being able to handle this fairly complex scenario, we've already been tossing around terms like recipe and such that are viewers and users and contributors to OpenRewrite will be familiar with. But like to write a recipe to fix these bugs to add this new functionality, you have to learn or already be familiar with a variety of concepts. The LST, the visitor pattern, recipes, scanning recipe versus non-scanning recipe, a recipe that manipulates Groovy versus one that manipulates Java or XML. So when you were kind of coming to this project the first time, do you remember any of those concepts being particularly difficult or challenging or unfamiliar for you to learn?
I had no idea what an LST was before I started writing my recipe.
Yeah, fair.
I'm not, as I said, I'm not the guy who looks at a video and
Sure.
understands all of it. I need to deep dive.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things that Tim has shown me is like, yeah, here are some existing recipes that do something with Groovy or that does
Mhm.
that use the scanning
Mhm.
accumulator. And one of the most important tips that he also gave me is like start with a test. And I'm I'm going to some conferences for about for some time already, and there's always some workshops on TDD, and it's always like test has to be read first, and then you do the code. But in OpenRewrite, I find it very pleasing to really describe very small test cases. If you
Mhm.
start from scratch with a new recipe, and after some test cases, after you've added some test cases, that's one unit of work. When compared to real application development, where it's the MVC pattern or
Mhm.
online applications or batch applications, it's more
Things
often
that are
a
stateful or
thing.
distributed systems
Yeah,
are difficult to unit test.
yes, and you already have to start mocking stuff. Where with OpenRewrite, you just start from from your code basically in a multi-line string. Thank God we have multi-line strings for the unit
Yeah.
test. And it's you basically just mention I have this, and I want this, and okay, your test is read, and you write a recipe, you start your visitor, and you start looking at okay, what's the visitor I need, because
Mhm.
that's often today still my confusion. Like, hey,
Sure.
only on when we were developing the recipe change on Monday, we were like looking why don't we have the visit method visit method invocation.
Mhm.
We're looking like, okay, why can't I override this method? Turns out I had already overwritten it 2 methods lower, so that's why I couldn't.
Yeah.
um,
I do find in situations like that where I'm like I want to override visit method invocation. Oh wait, I've already overridden it. That is often like a sign that oh, I should make a separate visitor and apply that visitor within this first visitor. Decompose the problem into
yeah,
several visitors and kind of sometimes treat a visitor as akin to flow control. Kind of like an alternative to like having a for loop iterating over a bunch of elements. Create a new visitor that'll handle the traversal to get to the elements you want. And to something you said earlier about test-driven development, yeah, I think that open rewrite recipes are very amenable to a test-driven development kind of approach to software development in a way that not all software projects are, particularly when you have stateful components or distributed components. Making a unit test can be quite challenging, but a recipe is a lot like a pure function in some
yeah,
ways. Its inputs wholly determine its outputs. It should be deterministic. It should be stateless. So it has kind of all of the attributes that you would look for in something that is very unit testable. So I think
yeah.
that's an excellent point you've made there.
Yeah.
Um,
And And to add to it is, recently we've come into the habit of, whenever folks want to report an issue, that we suggest, well, could you maybe directly run it, create a runnable unit test and throw that into a draft pull request? And that is, I think, very achievable, no matter your level of skill. And then from there, it's very easy to maybe run it the first time, see if where does it actually not make the changes to the before, and from there pick things up.
I think my first recipe contribution was even me just writing the test and Tim writing the code. But I checked the box, I guess, like code maintainers can
Yes.
fix it in my repository. So my name was at the end on the recipe as well. I was like, yeah, I made some contributions here.
Yeah, not a lot of
to
people
brag,
know
but-
this. This is a little industry secret. Not a lot of people know this, but GitHub Copilot is actually Tim. Like, he is the GitHub Copilot. Yeah.
I do what
Well,
I can.
in that case, Tim, I also have a few suggestions for my other projects.
Look, he has to type very
Yeah.
fast to provide
Okay,
all of
yeah.
these suggestions. So sometimes you have to forgive him for being a little bit
no,
sloppy.
no blame then. No, no blame. But next time I see a snippet that doesn't compile, I'm calling you.
Okay.
It will not have anything to do with OpenRewrite. It's just
it does not. I'm sorry I said that, Tim. GitHub Copilot is not your fault.
But actually, GitHub Copilot has helped me also in apparently OpenRewrite was already there when the code base or the big data behind Copilot was trained, because often I get some idea where to look at of the OpenRewrite framework. Of course, it's moving, so it's probably not the best idea anymore,
Sure.
but at least I'm getting some, like, okay, it's somewhere in this module, it's somewhere with this class. The width pattern, it's quite good, although it doesn't really know what the width methods are on that kind of an LSD method.
Right.
The first time that I wanted to make some real change in the LSD, I remember Copilot was like, yeah, you might want to do with name. Okay, with name was not the correct one. I had to use with simple name, but at least I have some idea, like, okay, I have a string, I called the variable
ended up
new
being
name.
a
So
wrong guess, but close.
yeah, it's a close guess and it helps me. If you don't consider it as it's just going to do my work, it's a pair programmer, which you can, if you use the correct shortcuts, which you can make some velocity with, but it's not going to,
Sure.
well, it's not going to do my work, because this is the work I love. If he can do other work for me, like creating commit messages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what he can do.
Oh. So you said that you were very much a hands-on learner. That watching someone do it doesn't stick as much for you, and you had to engage yourself. So I'm curious what your experience was like of the documentation that exists. Like, was it useful to you? Did you reference the documentation, or did you mostly do your learning inside the debugger, as it were?
Yeah, it's definitely useful, and I find myself not in the habit enough of, hey, I'm going to try out this new stuff. Maybe I should read up a bit first, because often I code like plenty of lines of code, and then I end up like, hey, but there's a list utils in OpenRewrite, so I shouldn't be doing it like this. There's already a method there. So the documentation is very complete. So kudos to Mike, I think, who writes it.
Kudos to Mike for sure.
It's definitely complete. But as I said, I'm the kind of guy that needs to debug first, and then we'll read the documentation. We have other people here at the company as well, who are like, yeah, but I first want to understand a bit all the pieces of the puzzle before I even deep dive into some code. I'm more like, yeah, let me deep dive on this one. Let me fail hard and learn even more, or
Yeah.
yeah, lucky first shot and learned
So
learned as
so
well.
during that learning process, did you find um what was maybe missing that might have helped you, like an explanation of a concept that we didn't have, or maybe a debugging utility which would show you what was on the LST? Was there maybe a lesson that was hard won, or a concept that was difficult to wrap your head around, that after the fact you can look back and say, oh, if I'd had this thing that was missing, that would have been easier for me to learn and would have smoothed my ascent to becoming a, kind of an expert?
It's like I said in the beginning, I did not have any clue what an LST was. And I think it's somewhere in the documentation. It's the
Mhm,
tree visiting printer.
mhm,
This one saved my life.
mm.
Writing your LST once to your console, just system out print line tree visiting printer. I can
Yeah.
even write it blindly by now. At any moment, it's like, yeah, I need this one. Like,
Yeah.
this is my current file.
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, just printing out all the elements inside the LSD
Yeah.
helps me the best in finding, okay, if I
Yeah.
do this
Just see
logic,
the
if
tree
I take this
structure.
visitor, but maybe I'll have 5 levels deeper. I also have a method, so maybe I want to stop already with going deeper, so I don't have to
Mhm.
call super anymore.
Right.
That's, by the way, the fix of Monday. It was involved in, if there is a null check there, you don't want to go deeper. If it's a Gradle
Mhm,
task, you don't want to go deeper anymore because there might be other methods.
mhm,
All
mhm.
Gradle files were messed up. But it's a one-line code change and you immediately see impact, and it's not on one repository you see impact. It's um, we being a more of the central team providing recipe support. It's
Mhm,
you see the impact across the entire organization
mhm.
immediately.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen good success at organizations who are using Moderne, who are using OpenRewrite, when there is kind of a central team that is working on the migration or the code quality or the security, kind of whatever this, like, the central initiative is that cross cuts many different feature teams or many different business units, that you develop some sustain, so like some people who are bring together subject matter expertise and, Gradle or Spring Boot or security, as well as like the open rewrite kind of modern expertise together, and then can go and share that with individual feature teams, and then also take their feedback, so that and build that into recipes and tooling and such, so that not every single engineer in an organization needs to become an open rewrite expert, and that those people like you who kind of become the open rewrite or recipe expert can then, with having some idea how the system works, what it's good at, what it isn't, can make a much better bug report, and or a feature request than yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The I find it the picnic recipe set.
Hmm.
I love the idea of having everyone in the company do like a vote.
Hmm.
Someone can throw up an idea like, hey, from now on, let's write every variable declaration without a blank line in between,
Right.
and people can vote,
Uh-huh.
and that becomes the standard of the company.
Yeah.
It's always what I was thinking back then. It's like, okay, how can we set up such a thing ourselves?
Hmm.
Um, but also, when you join new in a
Hmm.
company, you might have just missed all those votes. So
For sure.
that's one of the dangers I see there. Is like how to do you also have like an overview of all these things? But then a few weeks later, Tim was explaining in these sessions online here, like, hey, we have now a solution where you can have your pull requests reviewed by recipe. And I was like, okay, you don't even have to train them. The system will do it by itself.
Yep.
He makes
Yeah.
2 variables with a new line in between. Yeah, that will be that's not according to the standards. So I really love the idea of I know, thinking back 2 or 3 years, we launched some Gradle initiative with like investigating what is like the coding standards. Are there any tools? Are there any plugins that can do code formatting for you? But it's always quite easily bypassable.
Yeah.
If you don't really want to have that clean code, well, people will just. It's like the same with a pre-commit hook. It should be the pride of a developer who says like, no, I want to have clean code, so I'm not going to bypass my pre-commit hook to get my code on master. And like our TypeScript code has like the TS-lint and the auto formatting. So I want to have the same for for my Java code. So
and
just
it's much easier to not bypass pre-commit hooks and other enforcement mechanisms when they are helping you to do things the right way, rather than just throwing up like, no, thou shalt not, errors.
yeah,
I
if it's
years later, I still resent the time that Checkstyle told me that on line 95 on column 34 I needed a space between my if statement and my opening parenthesis, which is, as Tim knows from reviewing my code, I always forget to put a space there. Tim's like, I could tell when Sam wrote a piece of code because there aren't spaces between the if statements and the opening parentheses. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you caught me. But also, like, Checkstyle, if you know there should be a space there, don't yell at me about it. Just put the space there.
just do it. So I don't know if is it already in the plugin? Is it going to be there? Like, this is the recipe that I want to run whenever IntelliJ triggers the save actions. I want to just.
Oh yeah, that's we do
Against
have
this class?
the Moderne IDE plugin. I don't think we have an integration with IntelliJ save actions yet, such that you could, like, when you save your, just hit save, that you could have a recipe run on your code to do formatting or something like that. But that's a good idea.
It's a small unit of work, because only the changes or the class that gets changed.
Yeah. Good suggestion. Good suggestion.
Yeah.
And the tests to me, when I was starting development, the 3 visiting printer, that's really a lifesaver. The tests, the 3 visiting printer, and then with the Moderne CLI, the JVM debug flag.
Yes, the JVM debug flag is huge, because no matter how good you are at thinking of possible edge cases, the real world and real code bases and all of their complexity and variation will still find ways to surprise you.
Well, especially I know last Friday we had quite a lengthy call on some groovy parsers.
That was a real challenge.
If you're looking at your code, it might not be exactly the same what is in the LST. So whenever I felt the need of like downloading the LST and I could put that JVM debug flag there, I could really put my breakpoint in my recipe. I could really see what's the value of this variable at this moment. There's no guessing. There's no looking at the code and it's like, yeah, that's a meta declaration. I'm guessing that's one of the parameters. No, if your meta declaration comes in, let's say as a JLiteral, you know something's wrong. And you don't have to look at your recipe at that moment. You have to look at why is this a JLiteral and not a method declaration. So
No.
that's to me also a lifesaver. The JVM debug flag, especially
Yeah.
for small. Of course, you have your unit test case, so you don't need the CLI. But if we still have a lot of Gradle 6 projects. Well, typically these are parsed slightly different. So in those edge cases, that's to me, I spend a lot of
For sure.
time and just stepping through the code, stepping through your LSD with a debugger. That's how I learn. That's my way of learning.
Yeah, so those are some good tips. So just to kind of summarize, it was, use unit kind of the unit test for recipes and test driven development. Be aware of the tree visiting printer utility that whenever you're like in a debugger, you say like evaluate expression, tree visiting printer, that print your LST element, and it prints out just a two-dimensional text form, a hierarchical, easy to read tree representation of the LST element, and use the JVM debug flag on the CLI to debug your recipes against real running code. I will also point out that I recommend you use the CLI for a lot of reasons, but if you're not using the CLI, if you are running your recipe through like the Gradle plugin, like the open source Gradle plugin, you can put on the system property org.gradle.debug equals true and hit a breakpoint in your recipe. And if you're running your recipe through Maven, you can do the same thing if you use the Maven debug executable instead of the regular Maven executable, and you'll be able to connect debuggers and hit breakpoints in your recipes with those as well. So it's always good to know that option is available to you.
It is there, but what I really like about the CLI is that you skip past building that model of your code first.
Yes.
If you have a particularly large project where it could take a minute, several minutes, maybe even more than that to build up that model, and having the CLI, you're able to skip past that and immediately jump to, and probably repeatedly jump to where you want to
Yeah,
look at
for
a
sure.
particular aspect.
But over there, I can always recommend going back in your stack in IntelliJ.
That was a good trick. That was one that I saw debugging with you, Jente, that I was not familiar with. I never realized that you could do that. That the IntelliJ debugger could do that. So thanks for sharing that tip with me.
It's insane. I always use it, but sometimes, of course, if you change your state, the state is already might already be changed.
But it works particularly well in an environment where you have substantially immutable data.
Yes, so that's perfect.
So
with OpenRewrite, I was always able to go back, but because everything is immutable, so you just start back from the m variable of the method, which like it came in, and you calculate the new method again and again and again until it's fixed. But indeed, sometimes even you will need to do, if you make a code change and test that code change, you'll need to do it again, and you don't want to be waiting for an LSD all the time.
For sure.
Downloading it is.
So if you had a magic wand, Jente, and you could just wish for one additional kind of thing from OpenRewrite, what would it be? Support for a new language, recipes for your favorite library. Like what's kind of on your wish list at the moment?
That's a tough one. We still have so many nice things ahead of us, which are already there. So we have some Spring Boot version upgrades coming our way. We have, we have a lot. Maybe I know the people of Spring Boot, the experimental project. They have like a JEE to Spring migrator based on OpenRewrite.
Oh, interesting.
I would love if I can migrate my JEE application to a Spring Boot application and
there you go.
for once and for all become with
Yeah.
GEE, and
Yep.
well, yeah, just uniform framework all the way, and
And
well,
and,
my
and do you
personal
know
preference.
if they're not quick enough? I know the folks at Red Hat are working on migrating from JE to their Quarkus stack. So,
To Quarkus stack,
that's-
and then we can use Quarkus to Spring Boot, or
Yeah, sure. If somebody writes a recipe
yeah,
for it, I think there's
you have all the
definitely
flexibility.
yeah, it's definitely if you're trying to get people to use your library or your framework, recipes that migrate from the alternatives to yours are a way to smooth adoption for sure.
Yeah, especially what I see a lot of value for us as a customer, a big organization. Then
Mhm.
um, you we today see that we have several versions of a library um, live in production. Not
Yeah.
always everything is migrated up to date. You have a project to add a feature to project A, but you
Hmm.
don't go actively rebuild project B, which they both might depend on the same library. So
Right.
by doing that, you have if you have to put that new feature in that library, the second project which does not get touched is not yeah really aware of that new feature. If it's like a
Right.
breaking change,
Right.
if it's like a property that needs to be changed, if it's like something, I just love the idea of, okay, I write a new version of my library, and immediately next to that I will also provide the recipe that you can use, like, hey, this is for version 2.5 to version 3.0, and you don't have to have the hassle. And
Right.
then on top of that, Moderne gives you the ability to, like, where is this version still in use?
Hmm.
Give me all the projects where they're still using the old version, and
Yeah.
then you can say, well, maybe in this project we will even take along all those other projects, because it's it's a no effort.
Hmm.
If you trust your test chain, you're well enough, but it's a no-brainer to bump all those projects to the latest version of your library, and
For
then
sure.
you have your entire landscape up to date all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if you're always current or very close to it, you're ready to deal with any curveballs that come out. If there's a breaking change or a security vulnerability, then that's the only thing you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with
Oh,
upgrading to the version before that and then also dealing with the major problem. So it kind of keeps you nimble, ready to react to the unexpected.
yeah, this reminds me of a library of which we had 23 versions to patch with a certain patch. It's creating branches of certain tags, patching them, and because we didn't have the time to write the recipes.
Right.
It reminds me of the Log4j
Yeah, like log
issue.
for shell.
Yeah, if we would have had OpenRewrite or Moderne, even
Yeah.
better at that moment, we could have just said, yeah, we know there's a bug and there's a recipe already, and we just
Yeah, there's definitely like a
provide it. And
disaster preparedness
yeah,
aspect. When something unexpected happens, if you have, all of the LSTs for all of your projects built, and you can run like an upgrade dependency version, or you start applying recipes to them immediately, then yeah, when that unexpected thing happens, you're ready to respond to it quickly. And maybe it's still a fire drill, but maybe the heat of the flames is not so intense, so you're able to turn down the temperature on them, that much faster.
but that does mean that you have to be with your master branch in production all the time, which is
Yeah,
also a challenge in very big organizations, which is
for
normal.
sure.
But yeah, not undoable.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, you
Mhm.
can have like multiple branches of the same repository in Moderne. Like you can set it up to produce LSTs for your master branch, as well as like your sustaining branches for any if you're going to be doing patch releases and such. Then um, then yeah, you can have that ready to go as well, and have this aid sustaining engineering efforts as well as engineering efforts on the head of master, the head of main. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, well, this has been a kind of a fun conversation. Any kind of like last questions you wanna propose, Tim, or topics you want to touch on? No, pretty good. All right. How about you, Jente? Any final thoughts? Last things you want to talk about, or cool stuff that you're working on you want to share?
Not really, no. I'm looking forward to providing even more.
Love that.
I did the recipe patch for someone who for some code that I didn't even need. And I must say that one really gave me myself on a Saturday night some good feeling. I didn't have anything better to do.
It's
But
satisfying to help somebody
unfortunately, yeah,
out.
it's a satisfying feeling. But unfortunately, Tim is always too fast. Whenever someone launches a question in the Slack, Tim beats me to it. It becomes like a challenge.
A race.
So we
Yeah,
should.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
We should send Tim a bit more frequent on a holiday. I know he went
I was
to
just
Mexico
telling Tim
recently, so-
yesterday he needs to take another long weekend sometime. But
Yeah,
he, like you, he might spend his Saturday night writing a recipe or something, even if he does take a long weekend.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
It's just too much fun to write a recipe knowing that it will run thousands of times, maybe
Yeah.
millions of times. I remember the recipes for sequence collections, just replacing get first and get last.
Mhm.
I see them all the time when I do a demo. I see them all the time when I see what customers are doing
Yeah.
with it. And you just know I'm gonna, with that one recipe I write, it's gonna do millions and millions of replacements, and that's my
Yeah.
little contribution to the Java ecosystem.
Do you
Yeah.
have like numbers somewhere on the open source app
Of like which
Moderne.io?
recipes have made the most like
Which are the top
commits?
contributing or top committing
Oh,
recipes?
that would be really
It
interesting. I mean,
it can be a race. I would definitely go for the second one and try to make that one top, and then
yeah, it would be fun to have like leaderboards for that, because like when a recipe run happens, like we know which recipes made changes to which source files at least. So, we know which, but like how does that get persisted? It'd have to be like in the commit message. And then we could go back through the commits and look which recipes made changes. And right now, I mean like if you make a commit through the Moderne platform, the commit just says like co-authored by Moderne. But if you like run a recipe locally with like the Gradle plugin or the Maven plugin, you probably write your own commit message after that, and the recipes that contributed to it were kind of lost. So yeah, we could potentially do that
yeah,
for the Moderne platform, and that would be really neat. I think see which
you guys
recipes are making the commits.
keep suffixing my commits. Also, that's another thing I noticed. Every time I make a Spring Boot 3 migration, people say
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Jente, you did an entire Spring Boot 3 migration." I'm like, "Yeah, I spent 2 hours on this. Actually, I just committed it with Moderne, but then there's this message at the bottom to make it
Yeah.
optional. Like people don't have to know that I did it through a platform, that I'm being lazy. I can do 2 hours of nothing and then just commit the code change
And
through the
everyone's like, "Wow,
platform.
Yente's so smart and
So
so
productive
productive."
today. Everything's
It's,
working. It's always consistent. Factories file of Spring
yeah,
Boot.
you might be interested in using the CLI to push your commits.
Yeah, I'll try. But still, no, the platform is well for the real pushing code. It's the way to be for me, because typically when I run a recipe, it's against
It's a lot of
20,
repositories.
30, 40 repositories at the same time, because I know I want to make the change over there, and we're not yet in the stage where we say like our recipes, our in-house recipes are ready for run it against the entire organization and we'll see what
Sure.
happens. We're not there yet, but what's holding us if we keep improving. If there are
Totally.
some bugs that are raised, we have our issues internally, which get resolved quite fast, and that's every new line to those recipes, every condition in those recipes will make them better for the entire organization. And if at a certain moment we like, yeah, this is now stable, we can always contribute back those recipes to OpenRewrite.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, it's been really fun talking with you, Jente. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll be chatting with you more in the OpenRewrite community Slack and Discord. And hope everyone has a great day, and look forward to seeing you again for next week's Code Remix Weekly.
Yeah, absolutely. Then next week we'll be bringing on Kyle, who will finally take us through the new recipe builder that anyone can use on the Moderne platform to customize your recipes and to extend them and really make them your own.
Looking forward to that one as well, then, because played around with it. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty neat what they came up with. Yeah, Kyle is a really impressive front end developer who can put together some really neat things, and the V2 recipe builder is quite a cool piece of utility for snapping and attaching recipes together. So look forward to that, everyone.
Yeah, cheers. So hope to see you then. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.